At first it was only a whisper, a cough in a distant port, a merchant feverish after docking from the east. Then the bells began to ring. By the time Europe noticed, death was already at its door. In a single lifetime, a third of humanity would vanish, not by sword or empire, but by something smaller than sight itself. This is the story of the Black Death, the plague that stopped the world from breathing. It began in 1347, when Genoese traders fled a besieged port on the Black Sea. Their ships carried grain, silk, and rats. Hidden in the straw, fleas thrived, tiny assassins loaded with a new terror. When the ships reached Sicily, the plague disembarked. Within days, towns collapsed into panic. Priests refused last rites, families abandoned the dying, and cities sealed their gates. It struck fast. Boils the size of eggs appeared under the arms and groin, blackened by blood. Fever, delirium, and death followed within days. Doctors wore beaked masks filled with herbs, desperate armor against the invisible. The air itself, they believed, had turned poisonous. They called it miasma, the bad air of God's punishment. No one could count the dead. Paris lost half its people. Florence buried so many that fields became cemeteries. In London, carts rolled every dawn, calling only two words: bring out your dead. Bodies burned by the thousands. Whole villages vanished from maps. For Europe, it was not a plague. It was an apocalypse. For centuries, faith had been the fortress of Europe. But now even the priests were dying faster than they could pray. The church promised salvation but could not explain the silence of heaven. Fear became rage. Flagellants marched through towns, whipping themselves to atone for sin. Others turned on the innocent, blaming foreigners, lepers, and Jews. In desperation, humanity turned against itself. Kings fled their capitals. Courts, markets, and schools fell silent. Law vanished. The living scavenged from the dead. The very machinery of society rusted to a stop. For the first time, peasants realized power could die too. The old order, divine right, unshakable hierarchy, cracked under the weight of corpses. Centuries later, we would name it Yersinia pestis, a bacterium spread by fleas from rats. But in 1348, science was a whisper against superstition. Some physicians wore emeralds believing they could draw out the poison. Others prescribed bloodletting, incense, even crushed emerald dust. The plague mocked them all. It was not divine wrath. It was biology, patient and merciless. When the plague finally receded, Europe was not the same. Labor was scarce, wages rose, and the rigid chains of feudalism loosened. The survivors built a new world from ash, questioning authority, experimenting, thinking. Art turned darker, faith more personal. Out of the grave of the Middle Ages, the seeds of the Renaissance began to grow. Even now, the Black Death lingers in memory, a warning carved into Europe's bones. It taught us that civilization is fragile, that fear can spread faster than disease, and that knowledge is the only antidote strong enough to fight both. The plague ended, but its shadow became our teacher. History is not just dates and names. It's breath and silence. The Black Death showed what happens when both are stolen. So the next time you walk through an old European square, listen. Beneath the chatter and the bells, the stones still remember when the world stopped breathing. If this journey into the plague's shadow moved you, subscribe to the History Frame for more stories that shaped our world. Next, we travel to the ashes of another fallen empire, when fire met faith and the world changed again.